You are tuned to Community Radio Networks. It is Friday, the 16th of February, and we have all the information that you need to take on the day. All coming up for you. We'll start with the world news, and later in a separate segment we'll have the financial and other news. And then the final segment will have some stories from the annals of history as well as your social calendar. Stay with us. We'll have you completely informed right here on Community Radio Networks. This is Community Radio Networks, the world news read by Shabnam Madgil. Alexei Navalny, the fiercest foe of Russian President Putin, who crusaded against official corruption and staged massive anti-Kremlin protests, has died in prison. Russia's prison agency reporting he was 47 years old. The Federal Prison Service said in a statement that he felt unwell after a walk today and lost consciousness. An ambulance arrived to try to rehabilitate him, but he died. The jailed Russian opposition leader, Alexei Navalny, has died in this Russian prison, the vocal critic of Russian President Putin, serving a lengthy sentence at a penal colony north of the Arctic Circle, where he was moved late last year. A lawyer and anti-corruption activist, he received a 19-year prison sentence last August, adding to the 9-year sentence he was already serving after he was found guilty of extremism, offenses that are widely considered politically motivated. People close to the activists have claimed that he was killed. The fiercest foe of President Putin, who crusaded against him. And shortly after his death was reported, the Russian SOTA social media channel shared images of the opposition politician, reportedly in court yesterday, and in the footage he's seen standing up and is laughing and joking with the judge via video link. He was moved from a prison in central Russia to a special regime penal colony, the highest security level of prisons in the country above the Arctic Circle, and that move happened last December. Jailed Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny has died, and the Federal Penitentiary Service saying that he felt unwell after this walk and almost immediately lost consciousness. Ukrainian President Zelensky has arrived in Berlin for only his third visit to Germany since Russia's all-out invasion of his country nearly 2 years ago. He was welcomed by Chancellor Olaf Scholz in front of the Chancellery building, where the two leaders shook hands and briefly posed for photographs. Both the leaders have signed a bilateral security cooperation deal as Ukraine's artillery shortage threatens to force a further rationing of shells. The agreement that was sealed today at the Chancellery in Berlin is designed to deter Russia from future aggression against its western neighbor after the current war ends. Zelensky had agreed a similar accord with the UK last month and will sign another with French President Emmanuel Macron later in Paris. He has instructed his Prime Minister to hold urgent talks with his Polish counterpart on the border situation with Poland. Poland's Prime Minister has said today that his country will upgrade the wall on its border with Belarus to better insulate the frontier against unauthorized migration. Donald Tusk also said that Poland and Finland both see the need for changes in the European Union's asylum legislation, which he called inadequate in the face of current migration challenges and threats posed by Russia's and Belarus's policies that are pushing unauthorized migration into the European Union. Ukrainian border guards say that the self-proclaimed president of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, continues to play into Russia's hands, aiming to shift the focus and portray Ukraine as the aggressor, but his statements lack real grounds. Moscow has enlisted at least tens of thousands of citizens of African and Asian countries, these to fight alongside its armed forces. Those who signed contracts are first trained on Russian territory before being sent to fight in Ukraine. The White House has publicly confirmed that Russia has obtained a troubling emerging anti-satellite weapon, but said it cannot directly cause physical destruction on Earth. White House National Security spokesman John Kirby has said U.S. intelligence officials have information that Russia has obtained the capability, but that such a weapon is not currently operational. House Intelligence Committee Chair Mike Turner and House Speaker Mike Johnson have been concerned for weeks about the national security threat posed by the possibility of a Russian nuclear power-spaced asset designed to target American satellites. The two wrote a letter to the White House requesting a meeting with President Biden. House Speaker Mike Johnson delivered this prepared statement aimed at reassuring Americans about a vague national security threat. Russia is apparently planning to take the future of warfare to new heights by stationing nuclear weapons in space. Two juveniles have been detained in connection with Wednesday's shooting following the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl celebration rally, which left one dead and more than 20 wounded. At least 23 victims have been identified, including a 43-year-old woman who died. The police chief, Stacey Graves, said that the other 22 victims range in age from 8 to 47, adding that half are younger than 16. During a Thursday morning press conference yesterday, authorities said the shooting at the Union Station following the Chiefs' Super Bowl victory rally appeared to stem from a dispute between several people. And one man who's been called a hero after stepping up when someone opened fire at the end of the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl parade, killing one and injuring over 20, says he had a simple reason why the alleged shooter got his attention. Spotted on camera tackling a man fleeing the scene of the shooting in Kansas City. A coyote believed to be responsible for biting 3 children at an Arlington park this week was captured and humanely euthanized. The coyote is believed to be behind these attacks at the Parkway Central Park located north of Lamar Boulevard between Cooper and Collins Street in Arlington. Keeping fingers crossed that that coyote is the one that attacked the kids. Special Counsel David Weiss charged a former FBI informant with lying about President Biden and his son Hunter Biden's involvement in business dealings with Ukrainian energy company Burisma Holdings, undercutting a major aspect of Republicans' impeachment inquiry into the president. Aides and allies to former President Trump have discussed the former president giving the official Republican response to President Biden's March 7th State of the Union address. Two of the sources said Trump himself had discussed it, but both sides said he's leaning against the high-profile gig. Donald Trump's unprecedented tangle of overlapping trials was on full display yesterday, with simultaneous court hearings in New York and Georgia. In Manhattan, a judge ruled that his hush money case will begin on the 25th of March, making it the first of his indictments to go on trial. So there are 39 days before he becomes the first former president in U.S. history to be tried on criminal charges. And it is in Atlanta that the attorneys grilled a special prosecutor on the Georgia election interference indictment against Trump over the prosecutor's romantic relationship with Fulton County District Attorney Fannie Wallace, trying to get her and her office thrown off the case. And we do have the Atlanta hearing taking on a tone of a soap opera, even without Trump present. Thousands of people watch live streams online and on cable news. And Fannie Wallace was trending topic on Google and X. We do have the New York trial lasting about 6 weeks, according to the papers there, and he is expected to in court on the 25th of March. Yesterday's hearing underscored how Trump had turned his court appearances into the heart of his campaign message. The strategy has been successful in a GOP primary season filled with voters who overwhelmingly support him. And we do have a judge ruling that former president and GOP frontrunner Donald Trump will face his first criminal trial with the jury selection on the 25th of March in New York. Nikki Haley presented Donald Trump as a candidate who will deliver only more defeats to Republicans as she tries to change the dynamic of the campaign before next week's crucial presidential primary in South Carolina. Everything he touches, we lose, she said last night at a campaign rally in Dallas, Texas. A speech which was interrupted multiple times by protesters tried to meld the former president's political setbacks with his legal difficulties. Earlier, of course, she, the former UN ambassador, told the audience that the former president has already said he's going to spend most of the year in a courtroom, not on the campaign trail, and that's not a way you win. Before the rally, of course, in Dallas, following a high-profile fundraiser for Nikki Haley, where she raised money from prominent Texas business executives, real estate developer Harlan Crow, also oil and gas producer Ray Lee Hunt, and billionaire Trevor Rees Jones were among dozens of co-hosts listed on that invitation yesterday. And Haley said that she intends to stay in the race at least until next month, when more than a dozen states, including Texas, hold their primaries on the 5th of March. Recent polls showed Trump with a more than 60% point lead in the Lone Star State, and he is in the endorsement of key state leaders, including Governor Greg Abbott, Attorney General Ken Paxton, and U.S. Senators Ted Cruz and John Cornyn. Nearly 4 years after Harvey Weinstein was convicted of rape and sent to prison, New York's highest court appeared torn at oral arguments about potentially overturning the landmark Me Too era verdict. His lawyers urged the state's Court of Appeals to dismiss the disgraced movie mogul's 2020 conviction, arguing that the trial judge trampled his right to a fair trial with pro-prosecution rulings that turned the trial into 1-800-GET-HARVEY. Former Representative Alice Clark was the first black woman elected to a Mississippi legislature, and now she's the first black person and first woman to have a portrait on display in the state capital. This news out of Jackson in Mississippi. She smiled as fellow lawmakers, friends and supporters honored her during a ceremony to unveil this oil painting, which has a prominent spot in the room where the House Education Committee sits. She's an 84-year-old Democrat from Jackson, served 39 years before deciding not to seek re-election last year. Tiger Woods is remarkably just like the rest of us, standing over his ball in the middle of the 18th fairway at the Riviera Country Club yesterday, preparing to hit his final approach of the day in what was his first round back on the PGA Tour in close to a year. But instead of simply hitting it into the green like he was supposed to, like he's done countless times before, he shanked it. His ball went flying off to the right into the trees and down into the slope brush that sits well below the final green. The 48-year-old, 82-time tour winner just stood there staring in total disbelief with his 8-iron laying on the ground. Nobody, not even the great Tiger Woods, is immune. Argentine President Javier Milei traveling to Washington today to deliver a speech at a conference full of Donald Trump supporters, the same week that U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is reportedly weighing a visit to Buenos Aires. The timing of the two trips risks straining relations between the Milei and Biden administrations. His speech would be given to an audience full of conservative activists who oppose Biden's re-election and have tightly embraced Trump's candidacy. A bipartisan U.S. congressional delegation will visit Hungary this weekend as pressure grows in Budapest to ratify Sweden's NATO membership when Parliament reconvenes after its winter break. Hungary is the only NATO country not to ratify Sweden's application, a process that requires the backing of all members, souring relations with the U.S. and raising concerns among its allies. President Biden has reiterated his warning to Israel not to go ahead with its planned assault on Rafah without a credible plan to ensure the safety of more than 1 million Palestinians sheltering in the city. European Union Foreign Policy Chief Joseph Borrell says he wants to see all European Union countries make a joint appeal to the Israeli government not to launch a full-scale ground offensive into Rafah. He was speaking this morning on the sidelines of the Munich Security Conference and said he hoped the 27 European Union members could find unanimity on the subject and formally urge Israel not to invade the southern Gaza city. 3 longtime supporters of Israel and key U.S. allies issued a joint statement warning Benjamin Netanyahu against a planned offensive in the southern Gaza city of Rafah as this international calls for ceasefire are mounting. Canada, Australia and New Zealand said they were gravely concerned about a potential operation by the Israel Defense Forces in Rafah, adding the impact on civilians would be devastating. The UN Human Rights Office has said it is deeply worried about the Israeli raid on the Nasser hospital in southern Gaza. Gaza's largest functioning hospital under siege today in Israel's war with Islamist group Hamas, leaving patients and doctors helpless in the chaos as warplanes struck Rafah, the last refuge of Palestinians in the enclave. Israeli forces raided this biggest functioning hospital as footage showed chaos, shouting and gunfire and dark corridors filled with dust and smoke. The UN's High Commissioner for Refugees has said that the spillover of refugees from Gaza's Rafah into Egypt's Sinai would be a disaster, and that Egyptian authorities had made clear the Palestinians should be assisted in the enclave. Egypt is building a massive miles-wide buffer zone and wall along its border with southern Gaza as fears grow over Israel's planned ground offensive where more than half of Gaza's population is sheltering. Egypt is preparing this area at the Gaza border, which could accommodate Palestinians in case Israeli offensive there prompts an exodus across the frontier. Lebanon has submitted a complaint to the UN Security Council following a series of Israeli attacks on civilian targets considered the most violent and bloody since last October. The attack in southern Lebanon had killed at least 10 civilians this week, including children. Israel accusing South Africa of abusing the International Criminal Court's jurisdiction by requesting new measures due to plans by the Israeli army to expand its ground invasion into the city of Rafah in southern besieged Gaza. 72 of the 99 journalists killed last year were killed in the Israel-Hamas conflict, making the last 12 months the deadliest for the media in almost a decade. And a UN trade body official has said that Gaza will need a new Marshall Plan to recover from the fighting between Israel and Hamas, adding that the damage from the conflict so far amounts to around $20 billion. South Africa is leading a regional force that's moving into Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo at the risk of being caught up in a conflict that has displaced 7 million people. Operation Thiba is an initiative of the 16-nation Southern African Development Community, though it's unclear how it will be funded. Troops from South Africa, Tanzania and Malawi will begin to replace a United Nations force that's been in Congo for 25 years and a year-old East African community development. Neither has been able to stabilize a region that's rich in tin, tantalum, gold and other metals. Senegal's government called for talks on setting a new presidential election date after the nation's top court rejected President Macky Sall's bid to delay the vote. And Kuwait's ruler, Sheikh Mishal al-Ahmed al-Sabah, issued a decree dissolving parliament after lawmakers used language deemed as offensive to him. It's the third time since June of 22 that the elected National Assembly is disbanded. Rafael Nadal was forced to shelve his plans to return to action at next week's Qatar Open, admitting he's not ready to compete. The 37-year-old missed most of last year with a hip injury sustained at the Australian Open before making his comeback at last month's Brisbane International. And ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the World News on Community Radio Networks. As war in Ukraine grinds towards its third year and fighting in Gaza inflames a broader crisis across the Middle East, global security observers are keeping a close watch on another part of the world, North Korea, where Kim Jong-un's latest provocations are raising questions about his military intentions. In recent weeks, the leader has brushed aside decades of his country's policy towards South Korea, now proclaiming that North Korea would no longer seek reconciliation and reunification with the South and calling for it to be classified as their permanent enemy. The influential sister of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has offered a rare opening for Japan, saying she saw a positive tone in comments from Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, who is seeking a summit. Kim Yo-jong indicated a meeting of leaders would be possible if Japan does not lay such a stumbling block as the already settled abduction issue. Taiwan has defended its maritime operation that led to the death of 2 Chinese fishermen and prompted China's condemnation. The Philippines said it will respond to any dangerous maneuvers by China in a disputed South China Sea shoal, where Manila has started rotating vessels this month amid heightened tensions with Beijing. The Philippines is seeking new avenues for trade in a bid to build economic resilience amid the possibility that escalating maritime tensions with its top trading partner, China, may lead to sanctions. Relations between the two nations have been strained over the past year as President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. pursues a more assertive posture to counter China's sweeping claims of the disputed South China Sea. Indonesia's Defense Minister Prabowo Subianto declared victory in the presidential vote, citing independent pollsters, putting him on course to lead Southeast Asia's largest economy after 2 failed attempts. The 72-year-old ex-general and his running mate, Gibran Rakabuming Raka, waved to thousands of supporters in a victory celebration there as the pair secured nearly 60% support in quick counts done by private pollsters. At a Singapore Security Forum, Indonesian Defense Minister Subianto had left onlookers stunned when he delivered what appeared to be an impromptu peace plan to end the war in Ukraine. And Bangladesh Nobel Peace Laureate Muhammad Yunus said that several of his firms were forcefully taken over weeks after his conviction in a criminal case his supporters say was politically motivated. The 83-year-old Muhammad Yunus is credited with lifting millions out of poverty with his pioneering microfinance bank, but has earned the enmity of longtime Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, who has accused him of sucking blood from the poor. He's facing more than 100 other charges over labor law violations and alleged draft. Around 160 global figures, including former President Barack Obama and ex-UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, published a joint letter last year denouncing continuous judicial harassment of Muhammad Yunus. Prime Minister Modi opened the Grand Hindu Temple in the United Arab Emirates, capping off a two-day visit to the Muslim nation that is home to around 3.5 million Indians. A day earlier, tens of thousands of Indians filled a soccer stadium in the capital of Abu Dhabi, cheering on Modi, who is seeking a rare third term in India's upcoming general election. His visit to one of India's largest trading partners showed how the Hindu nationalist has deepened New Delhi's relations with the Middle East. The opening of a temple in a Muslim country has garnered widespread domestic press coverage in India and follows last month's opening of a massive temple in India. And the UAE government gifted the 27 acres in Abu Dhabi, where the Grand Temple, built at a cost of $95 million by the Hindu BAPS organization, was founded in Gujarat more than a century ago. Accompanied by Hindu religious leaders and monks, he offered prayers and performed rituals as he toured the temple in an event that was attended by members of the UAE government, Bollywood actors, and the Indian community. The opening of the first traditional stone-carved Hindu temple on the Arabian Peninsula, the birthplace of Islam, is symbolic of the close ties between India and the UAE. The two countries also signed a series of agreements during the visit, including a framework accord there on developing a sea and rail trade corridor from India across the Arabian Sea to the UAE and through Middle Eastern states, including Israel, to Europe. Protesting Indian farmers relaxed inside their tractors as they awaited orders from leaders to advance on the capital, vowing they'd last longer than the police currently has been blocking their route. Amid the nationwide strike declared by the protesting farmers' unions, the situation continues to be tense along the Punjab and Haryana Shambhu border, with police resorting to tear gas shelling and stone pelting. The protest today marked the fourth day as the breakthrough remains to be achieved between the government and the protesting farmers, who met yesterday for a third round of meeting to discuss farmers' long-standing demands. The Grameen Bharat Bandh, called by the farmers, disrupted activities across several sectors, particularly transportation and agriculture. Thousands of farmers this week have launched what they have dubbed Delhi Chalo, or March to Delhi, to demand a law to fix a minimum price for their crops. We also have commuters in Punjab facing inconvenience today as buses stayed off the roads in response to the Samyukta Kisan Morcha's call for a Bharat Bandh today to press the government to accept the farmers' demands, including a legal guarantee. Tensions escalated in Srinagar today as the Jammu and Kashmir police detained 50 trade union leaders and activists who were gearing up to stage a protest at the Lal Chowk in solidarity with the demands of these agitating farmers across the nation. India's main opposition Congress party said that its bank accounts had been frozen by the tax department weeks before the expected announcement of national elections. Congress General Secretary Priyanka Gandhi Vadra admitted to a hospital due to ill health, because of which she would not be able to attend the Bharat Jodo Nyaya Yatra in Uttar Pradesh's Chandauli today. She was supposed to join her brother in Uttar Pradesh after the yatra entered the state from Bihar. Prime Minister Modi reiterated his resolution of winning over 400 seats for the NDA, the National Democratic Alliance, in the upcoming Lok Sabha elections. While addressing an event in Haryana's Rewari, he highlighted the government's achievements over the past decade and laid special emphasis on Chandrayaan-2 mission and the G20 summit success. Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal today moved a motion of confidence in the Assembly. The proceedings of the House will take place tomorrow, and the motion will be taken up for discussion. Amid the Sandesh Khali violence, the National Commission for Scheduled Castes has submitted a comprehensive report to President Murmu recommending the imposition of President's rule in West Bengal. We do have England's opener Ben Duckett blazing his way to a magnificent 100 off just 88 balls in response to India's first innings total of 445 on the second day of the third test in Rajkot today. In this third test between India and England in Rajkot, India's batters committed a second offence by running in the middle of the pitch, which resulted in a 5-run penalty. Pace's Haris Rauf's central contract was terminated by the Pakistan Cricket Board following a probe into his alleged refusal to join Pakistan's test squad for the tour of Australia 23-24. Democratic standards across the world have fallen last year amid the spread of wars, authoritarian crackdowns, and declining levels of trust in mainstream political parties. This, according to the Economic Intelligence Unit, titled Age of Conflict. This study provides a snapshot of the state of democracy in 165 independent states and 2 territories. The top 3 places in the index are occupied by Norway, New Zealand, and Iceland, while the bottom 3 countries are North Korea, Myanmar, and Afghanistan. A case in point is Pakistan, which has suffered the biggest regression in the Asian region, its score falling to 3.25, triggering a downgrade from hybrid regime to authoritarian regime and a decline of 11 places in the global ranking. Pakistan was among 6 states on the globe to have their classification changed, the others being Greece, Papua New Guinea, and Paraguay, as well as Angola. And the only Asian country to be downgraded so significantly was Pakistan. About a week after Pakistan's inconclusive election, 2 main candidates have emerged in the race to become the country's next leader. In one camp, the favorite Shehbaz Sharif, the nomination of Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz, and in the other, the man picked from jail by Imran Khan. It is PTI Central Information Secretary who said that this year would be remembered due to the biggest voter fraud in Pakistan's history against the party and its candidates. As a scheduled second round of talks between the contact and coordination committees of the PPP and the PMLN could not take place yesterday, as both sides sought more time to assess proposals that came up in their meeting. The next huddle between the 2 sides to take place today. We do also have PTI founder Imran Khan nominating Omar Ayub as the party nominee for the post of Prime Minister, as he instructed his party leaders to make contact with other aggrieved parties to put a joint front against alleged rigging on the 8th of February. The PTI has called for countrywide protests tomorrow against the unprecedented, massive and brazen rigging. PTI Senior Vice President Sher Afzal Marwat has said that the party founder Imran Khan wants supporters to come out and protest tomorrow at 11:30 in the same numbers as they came out on the 8th of this month. PTI leader also has said that he will lead the protest from Islamabad's F9 Park to the National Press Club tomorrow. Separate petitions have been filed before the Islamabad High Court through Barrister Ali Zafar against Imran Khan's sentences in the Tosha Khana and the Cypher cases. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have in the world news for you. And we are also going to get you some financial news and plenty of other information coming up in our next segment. Stay with us right here on Community Radio Networks. Let's get you now the financial news on this lovely Friday morning. It is the 16th of February, and I have huge thanks going out to Discount Power, to Houston EB5, the Ahluwalia Law Offices, Wyndham Hotel in Irving, Digital X-Force, Kinzer Law, My Kolachi, Ruchi Palace, Shri Vimal, Vimal's Venue, Eggholic, Mystic Mandala, and Flashbrush Productions for their support of community radio networks. Let's get you those financial news, and we always start with the foreign currency exchange rates. The Indian rupee is at 83.02, Pakistani rupee at 279.55, Bangladeshi taka at 109.74, the Sri Lankan rupee at 312.57, Nepalese rupee 132.89, the British pound at 0.80, the euro at 0.93, the Canadian dollar 1.35, the Australian dollar 1.54. Mexican peso 17.07, Chinese yuan 7.19, Japanese yen 150.58, the Russian ruble at 92.14, the Thai baht at 36.14, and the Turkish lira at 30.83. U.S. stock futures mixed this morning as investors braced for an inflation reading that could set the tone for the end of a bumpy data-driven week. S&P 500 futures added 0.2% in the wake of another record closing high, but Dow Jones Industrial Average futures hovered below the flat line. Contracts on the tech-heavy Nasdaq 100 outperformed, rising almost 0.6%. Yesterday, the U.S. stocks had climbed, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average gaining 300 points to regain its losses from earlier in the week as investors largely shrugged off a mixed bag of economic data. Coinbase Global Inc. posted a profit for the first time in 2 years after a fourth-quarter rebound in digital asset markets lifted trading revenue, sending the shares of the largest U.S. cryptocurrency exchange higher. Revenue jumped 51% to $953.8 million, topping the $826 million average estimate of analysts surveyed. Oil has dropped after the U.S. reported crude inventories rose 12 million barrels last week. West Texas Intermediate fell 1.6% to settle below $77 a barrel after trading in a roughly $2 range. Mortgage rates in the U.S. rose to the highest level since mid-December, just as the housing market entered its key spring selling season. The average for a 30-year fixed loan was 6.77%, up from 6.64% last week. House lawmakers begin to flood out of Washington yesterday for a scheduled 13-day recess. When they return, representatives will have just a few days to avert another potential government shutdown. The U.S. House will not pass another temporary spending bill to avert a partial government shutdown when the latest deadline expires on the 1st of March, according to the chamber's number 3 leader. The House voted yesterday to pass legislation that would effectively undo the Biden administration's freeze on new liquefied natural gas export approvals. Donald Trump may be finally headed for Wall Street. The SEC has signed off on one of the last outstanding hurdles to a more than 2-year-old planned merger to take the former president's media venture public. Trump Media and Technology Group and Digital World Acquisition Corporation. And what constitutes political content? It's an important question that Meta has conspicuously left unanswered, despite the Mark Zuckerberg-led social giant vowing last week to clamp down on the topic across both Instagram and Threads, an extraordinary move that will have far-reaching and significant consequences for the public discourse. A proposed class action lawsuit filed in federal court on Valentine's Day, of all days, claims that instead of helping users with relationship goals, apps including Tinder, Hinge, Bumble, OkCupid, and Plenty of Fish are designed to turn users into addicts who buy expensive subscriptions to continue their compulsive use. NVIDIA is at the center of a new meme stock rally. Its earnings report will put that theme to the test again. And we do have Nike today saying it'll cut about 2% of its total workforce, or more than 1,600 jobs, as the sportswear giant looks to cut costs after flagging weaker profits this year. Nike's global peers Adidas, Puma, and JD Sports too have warned of weaker earnings this year as consumers cut back on non-essential spending. Eli Lilly and Company's relentless stock records have Morgan Stanley analysts musing whether it will become the first U.S. company outside of the Magnificent Seven to reach a market value of $1 trillion. Conversational AI company Sierra seeks to shake up how companies engage with their customer base, calling its artificial intelligence model more than just a customer service bot. Toss some lighter fluid on the performance of the flame-grilling, Whopper-focused Burger King. After years of misfires, it appears Restaurant Brands International is finally turning the corner at its most iconic brand amid a series of investments. Executives credit the improvement at Burger King to several factors. First, aggressive marketing efforts around new menu items such as the Royal Crispy Wrap. The company also launched a catchy campaign this month to award a contestant $1 million for creating the next take on the Whopper. And secondly, early benefits from millions of dollars being spent to support remodeled, more futuristic-looking restaurants. And lastly, less discounting on the famed Whopper. Collectively, the initiatives are referred to internally as Reclaim the Fame. Colorado's Attorney General filed a lawsuit seeking to block Kroger's proposed $25 billion acquisition of rival supermarket chain Albertsons, saying consumers would be hurt. And a good education is a ticket to a better future. Generally, the higher the level of education one completes, the higher their income potential and the lower their chances of unemployment become. Some states are able to provide better quality education than others. We have Massachusetts at number 1, Vermont at number 2, Maryland at 3, Connecticut at 4, and Colorado at 5. And Texas ranked 41. Now is a better time than any to visit or possibly even get a job in the central Texas city of Austin, recently ranked the number 1 best performing city in the country for the first time in a decade. It is the Milken's Institute 2024 report, which annually measures a city's sustainable and equitable growth, named the Austin Round Rock area first among large metros, which is a spot the city previously had in 2013. The report credits Austin's return back to the top because of its strong labor market performance and robust technology sector that boasts 14 high-tech industries that continue to grow in employment as well as wages. Dallas Fire Rescue has finished rebuilding a station that was destroyed in a tornado in 2019. The National Weather Service confirmed that when a dozen tornadoes touched down across Texas during that outbreak, and one of the tornadoes hit northern areas of Dallas and Richardson, causing EF3 damage, hitting dozens of homes and 2 schools also. And it was this fire station that was reopened yesterday by Dirk Nowitzki, who wore number 41 when he played for the Dallas Mavericks and attended the opening of this fire station. It's not yet known what killed an endangered fin whale, but people can marvel at the large marine mammal as it decomposes on an Oregon beach. While it's sad, it's also super educational there at the Seaside Aquarium, where we have the many from the aquarium going to see that. Just don't touch it because it can carry diseases and can be transmitted to humans as well as pets. The 46-foot male whale washed ashore at the Sunset Beach State Park, south of Warrenton, and it was entangled in rope. But before officials could examine the rope and investigate the type of fishing gear it was, someone took it off and took it away. In recent years, Miami Beach officials have tried a slew of tactics to deal with spring breakers who come to South Beach to party and pack Ocean Drive during the month of March. None of them have stopped people from visiting, and last year's festivities were marred by 2 deadly shootings and hundreds of arrests. This year, the city is trying to get ahead of the chaos. To do so, officials are spelling out how a series of measures will mean harsh consequences for misbehavior and discomfort, even for those who simply want to have a good time. Miami Beach Police Headquarters leaders held a press conference to discuss their strategy for South Beach, and a new messaging campaign from the city declares that Miami Beach is breaking up with spring break and features an imagined text message conversation in which the city says, "Hey, spring break, we're over." An international flight bound for Detroit Metro Airport was forced to turn around when maggots began raining down on passengers from the overhead cabin. Delta Flight 133 had taken off from Amsterdam and headed to Detroit when it adjusted its course and flew back to the Schiphol Airport in the Netherlands after an hour in the air. A stunning discovery has been made in Spain, where a 3,000-year-old treasure has been found to contain jewelry made with metals from beyond planet Earth. The treasure of Vienna, which consists of 59 gold-plated objects, was unearthed near the town of Vienna in the province of Alicante. It is one of the most important finds of gold artifacts dating from the Bronze Age in the Iberian Peninsula. Scaffolding that covered the top of the Notre Dame Cathedral following a devastating fire in 2019 is being removed, marking a milestone in the reconstruction. As the shell at the summit has been taken down in recent days, it has revealed the cathedral's new spire for the first time, adorned with a golden rooster and a cross, offering a glimpse of the building's expected appearance upon completion. People around the world have pledged more than $1 billion to rebuild the Notre Dame. A recent study tapped into the power of human olfactory system to ease depression. More specifically, it evaluated whether familiar scents like freshly brewed coffee or tobacco could help people with depression improve their memory recall. Aromatherapy has long been sought after by those looking to use their hunger to better themselves, and a new study has found that some scents are the most effective at curing depression. The scents used in the research included ground coffee, coconut oil, ketchup, orange essential oils, Vicks Vapor Rub, cumin powder, clove bulbs, vanilla extract, red wine, and shoe polish. Dictionary.com just got a winter refresh. The popular online lexicon recently added 327 new entries, 173 new definitions, and 1,228 revised definitions. The entries run the gamut of categories from youthful slang to science terms and new wellness fads, and they include the TikTok trend girl dinner, defined as an often attractively presented collection of snacks that involve little preparation, such as small quantities of cold cuts, cheese, fruit, cherry, tomatoes, etc., deemed sufficient to constitute a meal for one. There's also stellar nursery, an astronomy phrase that entered the mainstream thanks to discoveries from the James Webb Space Telescope. Shacket, a combination of shirt and jacket, and so much more. Two major world economies, Japan and the UK, have fallen into a recession in the second half of last year. While Japan's unexpected fall comes off the back of a contracting gross domestic product, its economy also shrank by 3.3% in the previous quarter, and UK's decline comes ahead of this year's expected election for Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who has promised to boost growth. Tai Chi, a traditional slow-moving form of Chinese martial art, is known to increase flexibility and improve balance, and now new research suggests it's better than more vigorous aerobic exercises for lowering blood pressure in people with pre-hypertension. Pre-hypertension is blood pressure that's higher than normal but doesn't quite reach the level of high blood pressure or hypertension, and considered a warning sign that heart disease may be ahead. China's central bank is poised to keep cash conditions and monetary policy broadly stable as policymakers focus on a weakening currency. And Malaysia's economy in the fourth quarter of last year grew 3% from a year earlier. India and Taiwan signed an agreement today to bring Indian migrant workers to the island in an effort to address the labor shortage in Taipei. Taiwan, known for its semiconductor production, has an aging population and currently relies on migrant workers from the Southeast Asian countries such as Vietnam, Indonesia, the Philippines, and Thailand also. Cambodia will begin installing hundreds of monitoring cameras and import 4 tigers from India as part of a plan to restore its tiger population. Tigers were declared functionally extinct in Cambodia in 2016 by the Worldwide Fund for Nature. The last tiger spotted in the country was seen in 2007 by a camera trap, a hidden camera that is triggered by the movement of animals. The Reserve Bank of India has signed an agreement with Nepal's central bank for integration of the UPI with National Payments Interface of the Himalayan country. The agreement was inked in the presence of Reserve Bank of India Governor Shaktikant Das and his Nepali counterpart Mahaprasad Adhikari, and the signing comes 2 years after the National Payment Corporation of India's international arm inked an agreement to facilitate the deployment of UPI in Nepal. India's youngest airline, Akasa, which started flying in August of 22, will start international flights from next month. The low cost, which has secured bilateral agreements with Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and Qatar, will have a 4 times a week flight between Mumbai and Doha from the 28th of March. SpiceJet CMD Ajay Singh has submitted a bid to revive the defunct Go Air in his personal capacity, along with Busy Bee Airways. And also Jaideep Merchandani's Sky One has submitted a bid for Go Air. Ajay Singh had bid for Air India too when the government was divesting the Maharaja, who eventually went back to the founder Tata Group. SpiceJet has been facing a cash crunch for over 2 years now, due to which it has been delaying payment to stakeholders, including salary. Wall Street banks are ramping up efforts to attract new business in India as billions are set to flow into the country's trillion-dollar sovereign debt market following the inclusion of the nation's bonds in global debt indexes. Morgan Stanley, Barclays, Citigroup, and Deutsche Bank are among institutions that have or are in the process of engaging with global investors who would potentially invest large amounts of money in India. Barclays is hosting a roadshow with key India Finance Ministry and central bank officials in Mumbai and New Delhi this week, while Morgan Stanley is set to hold one in London after having conducted a roadshow in Asia. With the proposed merger of its Indian arm with Zee terminated, Sony will seek various options, including finding another opportunity to replace the plan and organic growth opportunities in India, which has great potential in the long term. We do have the yield premiums on Indian companies' dollar bonds dropping, which means those on the Adani Group securities are below their level when short seller Hindenburg Research report was published last year. The gauge of Indian corporate and quasi-sovereign debt showed spreads hit their tightest in more than 3 years this week, and the metric for reach of the 15 U.S. currency notes issued by billionaire Gautam Adani's conglomerate is at least 50 basis points below its January 23 level. Reserve Bank of India Governor Shaktikant Das has recommended to other countries the Indian strategy of coordination between the central bank and the government to address the demand and supply side of inflation. He said India's successful policy response to adverse shocks can serve as a template. And the worry being stoked that the regulatory action against Paytm Payment Bank will cause major disruption in the market has found new takers. Paytm may be a visible payment tool, but RBI's restrictions on depositing funds in accounts or instruments issued by the payment bank that kick in from next month is expected to hit much lower numbers than what was being feared. India's trade deficit has narrowed to a 9-month low last month, and a surplus in the sale of flowers, soft toys, and chocolates was predictable on Valentine's week, but sellers say that the entrant on the list was beauty products, especially lipsticks. The founder and CEO of Blinkit shared on social media on Valentine's Day that looks like a lot of couples are going out today. Sales of beauty products compared to last Wednesday are way higher. The Defense Acquisition Council, under the chairmanship of Defense Minister Rajnath Singh, today cleared capital acquisition proposals worth 84,560 crore rupees to boost the capabilities of the armed forces and the Indian Coast Guard. Acquisition proposals include new generation anti-tank mines, air defense tactical controlled radars, heavyweight torpedoes, medium-range maritime reconnaissance and multi-mission maritime aircrafts, and flight refueler aircrafts. Cognizant's headcount has shrank by 7,600 employees to 3.4 lakh employees in the 23 financial year compared to the corresponding period last year. Indian hotels company, the iconic brand Taj, has announced Maharaj Kumar Sahib Dr. Laksharaj Singh Ji Mewar of Udaipur as its brand ambassador. Speaking on the occasion, Parveen Chandra Kumar, the Executive Vice President, Sales and Marketing, said that the Taj has long been heralded as a custodian of Indian heritage. In its 120 years, the Taj has etched its name in the annals of history, having shaped the evolution of the hospitality landscape in India. And he said that this commitment showcasing and preserving the rich cultural legacy of the country, his multifaceted approach to building tourism in Rajasthan, including driving participation of the local community, is in line with the Taj's framework of the goal of skilling the youth to bridge the employability gap in the industry. Intrinsically bound with the country's history, Taj has its presence in key historic destinations such as Udaipur, Jaipur, Jodhpur, Jaisalmer, Gwalior, Hyderabad, Varanasi, and Mumbai, and the brand focuses on conserving the cultural heritage of the region. Prime Minister Modi today laid the foundation stone for the 300 megawatt solar power plant virtually in Rajasthan. And Education and Skill Development Minister Dharmendra Pradhan launched an initiative for empowering India's Yuva Shakti to give a fresh impetus to skill development of youth. And towards this end, the government firmed up a number of industry partnerships with companies like Google, Microsoft, Flipkart, Teamlease, Upgrad, Reliance Foundation, and Infosys. And it's official now. Last month, the foggiest winter month in years, was a nightmare for domestic flyers and saw one of the highest number of travelers being affected by flight delays and cancellations. 1.3 crore people flew within the country last month, 4.7% more than the last January in 23. Celebrations of the onset of spring season have begun in the capital with the Delhi Tourism's Basant Utsav, organized at the State Emporia complex at the Baba Khadak Singh Marg in Connaught Place. And performing songs like Chhap Tilak and Ghar More Pardesiya, 25 children from the government schools presented Shades of Kalyan, a musical performance at the Triveni Kala Sangam yesterday. Against the backdrop of the Sundar Nursery's heritage tomb, Amaras Nights kick-started yet another musical chapter with a concert featuring folk musicians from Meghalaya, Rajasthan, and a contemporary band from Gujarat. Mukuri, the four-member Meghalayan band that performed in the capital city, said that such opportunities enable musicians like them to connect with a broader spectrum of music lovers. Goldman Sachs Group says Pakistan's dollar bonds will rebound, overcoming a fractured election mandate as the leaders of the emerging coalition understand the gravity of the economic crisis and will work together to secure the International Monetary Fund aid. The South Asian nation's bonds rallied, led by notes maturing in April, after the third biggest group in the new parliament pledged support for former Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif to take office again. The demand for Saudi Riyal suddenly jumped by 30% in the open market, but the price remains stable. It is buying of Saudi Riyals usually starts before Ramzan for Umrah. Within 3 to 4 days, the buying of Saudi currency jumped 30%, reflecting the rush for Umrah this year. Last year, a record 800,000 Pakistanis performed Umrah in Ramzan. And the latest proposal of the International Monetary Fund to further liberalize imports could destabilize the rupee, the Pakistani rupee and the dollar parity. Shares at the Pakistan Stock Exchange traded in the red today, with stocks plunging by more than 1,000 points by the day's end. The Feminist Collective, a leftist feminist group, has penned an open letter protesting the Karachi Literature Festival's decision to invite Germany-based author Rania Othman, a known supporter of the State of Israel, as a guest speaker to its 15th iteration. The festival has since removed her name from the list of speakers mentioned on its website. Othman, who has a history of problematic anti-Islam and anti-Palestine comments, was invited for 2 talks, and that for her book, The Summers, and then again for a poetry reading titled Beyond the Seas. And in their open letter, there were 199 signatories, including actors Sarbat Gilani and Rusty Farouk. The Feminist Collective highlighted that during a panel by the German newspaper, Othman, along a fellow panelist and the interviewer, claimed that Muslim immigrants, including Palestinians, are jihadists and terrorists for expressing sympathy with Palestinian resistance to a 75-year-long occupation. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have in your financial news for you today on this lovely Friday morning. It is the 16th of February, and I do have your final segment coming up. Stay tuned. Now, this, ladies and gentlemen, will be our final segment for today's show on this lovely Friday. And Friday is today is the 16th of February. North Texas has enjoyed a beautiful week with mild temperatures. And just think, at this time 3 years ago, we had dropped below zero. This morning, the temperature started at 60 degrees at 5:45 a.m. Another beautiful day ahead today with plenty of cloud cover, and afternoon highs will touch 70 degrees. But a subtle reminder that you do need to grab a heavy coat on your way out this morning, because you'll need it on the way back home. A strong cold front will blast through North Texas by the middle or late afternoon and drop temperatures into the mid-40s by 9 o'clock. Wind chills will be in the 30s due to this north wind gusting to 30 miles per hour, and temperatures will continue to tumble overnight, with Saturday morning lows tomorrow ranging between 30 and 35. Wind chills will be down to the 20s. So please protect your tender vegetation and bring your pets indoors. And then sunny, windy, and very chilly for tomorrow, with afternoon highs in the 40s. And as I said, wind chills will be in the 30s. Saturday night, because there will be a freeze across much of the area, and continue into Sunday morning, where the morning lows will dip to 28 to 32 degrees, but the wind will have relaxed by then. And Sunday will be another chilly day, though with less wind. And afternoon highs will barely reach the 50s. So that's your weather forecast for today. And let me tell you what else is going on here in town. Do want to remind you all that TIPS, the Texas Indo-American Physicians Society, the Northeast chapter, has a mentorship program. Beginning this year, TIPS NEC will be inaugurating a mentorship program to help students of Indian and South Asian origin. This is for medical students in the North Texas region and graduates of Indian medical schools who are looking for residency positions, fellowships, clinical and research observerships, and jobs. For more opportunities and information, you can send an email to mentorship@tipsnec.org. And tonight, the Grand Center in Plano is presenting Celebrate Love, a Valentine's party at 8 o'clock with exotic drinks, cocktails, appetizers, food, live DJ, live singing, lots of entertainment. You can get your tickets at sulekha.com or by calling Gagan Bhalla. His number is 469-878-1112. And of course, the entertainment and music by Music Masti Magic, and that is DJ Manish. Vimal Kansara is presenting Daisy Shah and Ali Kuli Mirza, and that's happening tomorrow. Bollywood Valentine's Night, tomorrow at Vimal's venue on Airport Freeway. For more information on that, you can call Vimal G at 817-881-2121. 817-881-2121. Helping Hearts and Caring Souls are having a fundraising dinner and entertainment to support people with disabilities in Pakistan, happening tomorrow, the 17th, at 7 o'clock at the Crystal Banquet Hall in Plano. And there will be a tribute to Madam Noor Jahan by Saima Jahan. If you need more information on this event tomorrow, you can call Anjum Anwar, 469-556-6475. And your presence tomorrow night is the heartbeat of this very impactful event, and your kindness and compassion will shine brightly on this very special night tomorrow, filled with music and dinner. We have on the 23rd of this month, Amazon original series Poacher, that is going to be out in India and in more than 240 countries and territories. A compelling investigative crime series that unearths the largest ivory poaching ring in Indian history, and it is based on court documents and testimonials, a fictional dramatization of events that transpired in the dense forests of Kerala and the concrete jungle of Delhi. And the series showcases the immense contributions made by Indian Forest Service officers, NGO workers from the Wildlife Trust of India, police constables and Good Samaritans who risked their lives to investigate the largest ivory poaching ring in Indian history. To uphold the story's authenticity, Poacher has been filmed in the real-life settings in Kerala and New Delhi and unfolds primarily in Malayalam, Hindi, and English. It is the first ever television series produced by QC Entertainment, the Oscar-winning production and finance company responsible for feature film hits such as Jordan Peele's Get Out and Spike Lee's Black KK Klansman. Poacher has been created, written and directed by Emmy award-winning filmmaker Richie Mehta from Delhi Crimes. And the series boasts a diverse and talented cast comprising Nimisha Sajai and Roshan Matthew and Debyendu Bhattacharya in pivotal roles. The U.S.-India Chamber of Commerce are having their Spirit of Innovation Technology round on the 23rd of this month from 9 to 3:30 at the Brookhaven College. Local graduate and undergraduate students competing in the Foundation Spirit of Innovation competition on February the 23rd. And you can come and watch these innovative students and show them your support at the Brookhaven College. More information is available on the Chamber's website, which is USI-COC, US India Chamber of Commerce.org. The Chamber is also inviting you all to the annual Women's Conference, which is happening on the 1st of March at the Plano Marriott at Legacy Town Center from 9:30 to 2. And the keynote speaker is St. Marshall, the CEO of the Dallas Mavericks, breaking barriers and elevating each other. And this annual Women's Conference provides professional and entrepreneurial women with a platform to be inspired, to network, and to grow. And this year's theme is Breaking Barriers and Elevating Each Other. Registration is open, so you need to get your tickets again on the Chamber's website, which is usicoc.org. And we are excited to share that Pratham USA is participating in India Giving Day on the 1st of March. India Giving Day is a nationwide celebration of generosity and philanthropy dedicated to making a positive impact in communities across India. And we invite you to join in commemorating this special occasion by supporting Mohalla Libraries initiative. Pratham Mohalla Libraries, community libraries, are a vital community resource that provide children with access to books and learning opportunities. Strategically placed in public spaces such as streets, parks, community halls, and rooftops, each library holds a carefully curated set of books suitable for children in grades 1 to 8. And Mohalla libraries are fostering this lifelong love of reading and learning in young readers. And so you can help us scale this initiative by making an early donation in support of India Giving Day fundraiser. And your gift will help establish new community libraries in India, filling them with a fresh set of books and ensuring that children have the opportunity to discover the joy of reading. And that's on the 1st of March. On the 2nd of March, a English family play called Maya can be seen at the NAC Theatre in Frisco. It is written and directed by Sumit Rekhi. And on Sunday, the 3rd of March, Jubin Nautiyal live in concert at the Relay Underground on Las Colinas Boulevard. It is brought to you by 360 Shows, Diamond Productions, and 24/7 Entertainment. You can call Mohammed Abbas for more information. His number is 214-679-6818. Don't forget, primary election day is the 5th of March. It's crucial to vote, and the voting details can be found at vote.org. The India Association of North Texas is celebrating International Women's Day on the 8th of March, which is the day itself, from 5:30 to 8. Invest in Women, Accelerate Progress is the theme, and this event will be held at the Collin College Frisco campus, the conference center there on Wade Boulevard in Frisco. You need to register for this event, and you can do that by going to the India Association's website, which is iant.org. The 14th Annual Festival of Colors, the Holi Mela, happening on Saturday the 23rd, and you can get more information at dallasfestivalofcolors.com. And the McKinney Asian Festival will be held on the 23rd of March from 11 to 6, brought to you by the Texas Women's Society in McKinney. There is Mystic Mandala presenting a holistic festival, Life and Wellness. It's a 2-day market on the 29th and 30th of March, the Easter weekend, at the Cotton Mill in McKinney. For more information, you can call Ananda at 469-888-9192, 469-888-9192. The Success Door, supporting the Pledge Campaign Foundation, presenting Fly, First Love Yourself Showcase Season 4. It is going to be happening on the 6th of April at the Dew Event Center in Louisville from 4 to 8. Tips are having their 5K and 10K run and walk, and that's happening on Sunday, the 7th of April at the Oak Point Preserve on Spring Creek Parkway. You need to register online and sign up at runsignup.com. Runsignup.com. We have a total solar eclipse that is going to occur over a dozen states on the 8th of April. 31 million people in the U.S. will be able to witness this rare event this spring that won't happen again for another 20 years. It will be the last total solar eclipse visible from the U.S. until the year 2044. Also would like to invite all of you to the 2024 Pratham Dallas Fort Worth Gala, an extraordinary evening dedicated to empowering children and young people in India to transform their lives and communities. Saturday, the 20th of April at the Omni Frisco Hotel. And this year's gala theme is Changing Lives, Transforming Communities, and will highlight the remarkable impact of Pratham's work in expanding access to quality learning opportunities. So please mark the 20th of April and join us for an unforgettable evening of exquisite dining and inspiring company in a cause that truly matters. For the first time in American television history, PBS stations across the U.S. will show a new documentary film on Swami Vivekananda called America's First Guru, and that too a first by an Indian origin documentary filmmaker. My new feature-length documentary film, America's First Guru, will be broadcast on public television in May of this year, telling the compelling story of how yoga, Vedanta, and the highest ideals of Indian wisdom first entered the popular American conversation in 1893 with the arrival of Swami Vivekananda at the first World's Parliament of Religion in Chicago, and how in 6 short years he traveled across the country, transforming American religion, culture, interfaith dialogue, and gender equality. Celebrated the universality and pluralism of all faiths, he changed the way the West saw India forever, and in doing so became America's first guru, and that'll be happening this summer. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have in your social calendar as it stands on this lovely Friday morning, the 16th of February. I have some stories from the annals of history that I would like to bring to you. But before that, I'd like to thank the supporters of Community Radio Networks. And they are Mr. Malik Jamal with Discount Power, and more details at discountpowertx.com. Also, Mr. Pardeep Kumar with Houston EB5, and you can find out more about those projects at houstoneb5.com. Aluwalialaw.com is the website for you to get more information about attorney Pallavi Aluwalia, and she can handle your next legal case. Also, the Wyndham Hotel in Irving that has the most exquisite banquet halls for your next event. And to get more information, you can call 214-675-1754. Digital X-Force, headed by Mr. Lalit Aluwalia, that brings us our cyber report every week. Kinzer Law with attorney Kimberly Kinzer, handling all immigration cases, and more information available at kinzerlaw.com. The Mai Kolachi restaurant in Plano, and now they also have the Ruchi Palace along with the banquet hall in Carrollton. Shri Vimal from their showroom on 183 and MacArthur, and they also have the Vimal's venue out there where they have a party that is happening tomorrow, and that is for Valentine's Day. Also, would like to invite you all to the Eggholic restaurant on MacArthur and 635. Mystic Mandala, I have huge thanks going out to Vijay and Ananda and to Priya with Flash Brush Productions. Okay, a few stories here from the annals of history that happened on today's date, which is the 16th of February. During the First Barbary War, U.S. Lieutenant Stephen Decatur leads a military mission that famed British Admiral Horatio Nelson calls the most daring act of the age. Happened on today's date in 1804. President Thomas Jefferson had ordered U.S. Navy vessels to the Mediterranean Sea in protest of continuing raids against U.S. ships by pirates from the Barbary states, which are Morocco, Algeria, Tunis, and Tripolitania. American sailors were often abducted along with the captured booty and ransomed back to the U.S. at an exorbitant price. After 2 years of minor confrontation, sustained action began in 1803 when a small U.S. expeditionary force attacked Tripoli Harbor in present-day Libya. And it was the U.S. frigate Philadelphia that ran aground near Tripoli and was captured by Tripolitan gunboats. The Americans feared that the well-constructed warship would be both a formidable addition to the Tripolitan Navy and an innovative model for building future Tripolitan frigates, hoping to prevent the Barbary pirates from gaining this military advantage. It was on today's date that this daring expedition into Tripoli harbor to destroy the captured American vessel was held. And that, ladies and gentlemen, happened on the 16th of February in 1804, and 6 months later, it was the U.S. Lieutenant Stephen Decatur, who headed that military mission, who returned to Tripoli harbor as part of a larger American offensive and emerged as a hero again during the so-called Battle of the Gunboats, a naval battle that saw hand-to-hand combat between the Americans and the Tripolitans. On the 16th of February in 1923 in Thebes, Egypt, English archaeologist Howard Carter enters the sealed burial chamber of the ancient Egyptian ruler King Tutankhamun. Because the ancient Egyptians saw their pharaohs as gods, they carefully preserved their bodies after death, burying them in elaborate tombs containing rich treasures to accompany the rulers into the afterlife. In the 19th century, archaeologists from all over the world flocked to Egypt, where they uncovered a number of these tombs. Many had long ago been broken into by robbers and stripped of their riches. But when Carter arrived, he became convinced there was at least one undiscovered tomb, that of the little-known Tutankhamun, or King Tut, who lived around 1400 BC and died when he was still a teenager. Backed by a rich Brit, Lord Carnarvon, Carter searched for 5 years without success. And in early 1922, Lord Carnarvon wanted to call off the search, but Carter convinced him to hold on one more year. And the wait paid off when Carter's team found steps hidden in the debris near the entrance of another tomb. The steps led to an ancient sealed doorway bearing the name Tutankhamun. When Carter and Lord Carnarvon entered the tomb's interior chambers, they were thrilled to find it virtually intact, with its treasures untouched. After more than 3,000 years, the men began exploring the 4 rooms of the tomb. And on today's date, the 16th of February in 1923, under the watchful eyes of a number of important officials, Carter opened the door to the last chamber. Inside lay a sarcophagus with 3 coffins nested inside one another. The last coffin, made of solid gold, contained the mummified body of King Tut. Among the riches found in the tomb, golden shrines, jewelry, statues, a chariot, weapons, clothing, the perfectly preserved mummy was the most valuable, as it was the first one ever to be discovered. And despite rumors that a curse would befall anyone who disturbed the tomb, its treasures were carefully catalogued, removed, and included in a famous traveling exhibition called The Treasures of Tutankhamun, and the exhibition's permanent home is in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. In a statement focusing on the situation in Korea, Soviet Premier Joseph Stalin charges that the United Nations has become a weapon of aggressive war. He also suggested that although a world war was not inevitable, at the present time, warmongers in the West might trigger such a conflict. His comments in response to queries from the Soviet newspaper Pravda were his first public statements about the nearly year-old conflict in Korea, in which the United States, South Korea, and other member nations of the UN were arrayed against forces of North Korea and Communist China. Coming just over 2 weeks after the UN General Assembly's resolution condemning China as an aggressor, Stalin's statement turned the tables by declaring that the UN was burying its moral prestige and dooming itself to disintegration. He warned the Western warmongers, through their aggressive posture in Korea, that they would manage to entangle the popular masses in lies, deceive them, and drag them into a new world war. In any event, he confidently predicted that Chinese forces in Korea would be victorious because the armies opposing them lacked morale and dedication to the war. And despite the rather blistering tone of Stalin's words on today's date in 1951, Western observers were not unduly alarmed. His attacks on Western aggression were familiar, and some officials in Washington took comfort in the Premier's assertion that a world war was not inevitable at the present time. Indeed, there was some feeling that Stalin's denouncement of the UN actions was actually a veiled call for negotiations through the auspices of that body. His comments and the intense scrutiny they were subjected to in the West were more evidence that in the Cold War, the war of words was almost as significant as any actual fighting. And then on the 16th of February in 1959, Fidel Castro is sworn in as Prime Minister of Cuba after leading a guerrilla campaign that forced right-wing dictator Fulgencio Batista into exile. Fidel Castro, who became commander-in-chief of Cuba's armed forces after Batista was ousted, replaced the more moderate Miro Cardona as head of the country's new provisional government. And various groups formed to oppose Batista's dictatorship, and in 1953 Castro led some 160 rebels in an attack on the Moncado barracks in Santiago de Cuba, Cuba's second largest military base. Castro hoped to seize weapons and announce his revolution from the base radio station, but the barracks were heavily defended and more than half his men were captured or killed. He was himself arrested and put on trial for conspiring to overthrow the Cuban government, and during his trial he argued that he and his rebels were fighting to restore democracy to Cuba, but he was nonetheless found guilty and sentenced to 15 years in prison. But he was sworn in as Prime Minister on today's date in 1959. And on the 16th of February in 1968, that date saw the first official 911 call placed in the United States, now taken for granted as first course of action in the event of an emergency by nearly all of the nation's 327 million people. 911 is a relatively recent invention and was still not standard across the United States for many years after its adoption by Congress. As telephones became common in U.S. households, fire departments around the country recommended establishing a single simple number to be dialed in the event of a fire or other emergency. A similar system had been implemented in the UK decades earlier. In 1936, when the code 999 was used, 999 was chosen for emergency telegraph and phone communications. The FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, decided to act in 1967, but the number itself came not from the government, but from AT&T, the corporation that controlled nearly all phone lines in the U.S. via its long-distance service and ownership of local Bell telephone subsidiaries. At the time, AT&T was considered a natural monopoly, a monopoly allowed to exist because high infrastructure costs and barriers to entry prevented challengers from emerging, and then AT&T suggested the number 911 because it was easy to remember and, crucially, had not yet been designated as an area code or other code which would make the transition easier. The first 911 call was placed by Representative Rankin Feit, the Speaker of the Alabama House of Representatives, in the town of Haleyville in Alabama on today's date the following year, and that is 1968. Nome, Alaska, adopted the system a week later. Still, it would be years before the system was widespread and decades before it was uniform. It was only in 1973 that the White House issued an official statement in favor of 911, and even that a suggestion rather than a law or executive order. By 1987, 50% of the nation was using the system. Canada chose to adopt the same number for its emergency calls, and 98% of the U.S. and Canada can now contact emergency services by dialing 911. In many former British colonies, 999 is in use, and the number 112 is used in Russia, Brazil, and other nations, even sometimes routing to the same services as 911 in the United States. It was the first call that was placed on 911 on today's date in 1968. U.S. officials report that in addition to the 800,000 people listed as refugees prior to the 30th of January in 1968, the fighting during the Tet Offensive has created 350,000 new refugees. The communist attack known as the Tet Offensive that began at dawn on the 31st of January, the first day of the Tet holiday truce, Viet Cong forces supported by large numbers of North Vietnamese troops launched the largest and best coordinated offensive of the war, driving into the centers of South Vietnam's 7 largest cities and attacking 30 provincial capitals ranging from the Delta to the DMZ. And among the cities taken during the first 4 days of the offensive were Hue, Dalat, Kontum, and Quang Tri. In the north, all 5 provincial capitals were overrun. At the same time, enemy forces shelled numerous allied airfields and bases. In Saigon, a 19-man Viet Cong suicide squad seized the U.S. Embassy and held it for 6 hours until an assault force of U.S. paratroopers landed by helicopter on the building's roof and routed them. Nearly 1,000 Viet Cong were believed to have infiltrated Saigon, and it required a week of intense fighting by an estimated 11,000 U.S. and South Vietnamese troops to dislodge them. By the 10th of February, the offensive was largely crushed, but with a cost of heavy casualties on both sides. Militarily, Tet was decidedly an Allied military defeat. The offensive was out there psychologically and politically a disaster. The offensive was a crushing military defeat for the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese, but the size and scope of the communist attacks had caught the American and South Vietnamese allies completely by surprise. The early reporting of a smashing communist victory went largely uncorrected in the media and led to a psychological victory for the communists. The heavy U.S. and South Vietnamese casualties incurred during the offensive and the disillusionment over the overly optimistic reports of progress in the war accelerated the growing disenchantment with President Lyndon B. Johnson's conduct of the war. And it was the Tet offensive results in many refugees that happened on today's date in the year 1968. Those were some of the stories that happened on today's date, and we do hope that you all are ready to have a beautiful day today, but do remember the change in the weather that I mentioned coming up. And that's all I have for you today on Community Radio Networks.